What's up, y'all? It's Sade Brown. Welcome back to my channel, Divine Proposition. I have a word from the Lord today about fasting for answered prayers. The scripture I'm going to read from is Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21. So I'll read the scripture and then, as usual, I'll share a story of how I fasted and God answered my prayer. So I know it's real. But let me start with the scripture first. Then we'll get to the story so I can, drop a little point home. All right. So Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21 reads like this. And I'm reading the New King James Version. All right. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffers severely. For he often falls into the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, Why we couldn't cast it out? So Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. And here's my favorite. Verse 21, it says, however, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. All right, so that was Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21. I struggled with irregular periods for 12 years. I know that kind of sounds similar to the woman in the Bible that bled for 12 years, that touched Jesus' garment, and then, it basically stopped. You can find that in Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34. I'll put it down below. I believe it's in Luke too. I'll put those two scriptures and stuff below. But so when I was 17, it was actually the same year I started having sex. TMI, but this is a story. It was the same year I started having sex, and so my period was late, probably about maybe 2 months late. And me being 17 and afraid, I thought that I was pregnant, and I didn't want to tell my mom because then she would know I was having sex. Have you been there? Maybe not that exact situation, but everybody keep a secret or two from their parents. So I didn't want mama to know I was out there doing the do that I wasn't supposed to be doing. Especially not who I was supposed to be doing it with, and at the time that I was supposed to be doing it. You know what I'm saying? So, having sex, period was late. Couple months late. Finally, it came on. However, a week went by, and it was still on. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, it was still on. And it progressively got heavier with time, but I was so afraid to tell my mom that I didn't tell her. And by month 3, it was so bad that I was running through pads probably every 30 minutes or so. So I didn't tell my mom because I was afraid. No, I was gonna have to have a conversation and tell her I'm doing the booty. So I called my stepmom, and she took me to the doctor. They told me I was struggling with something, and I may be mispronouncing it, but it's called menorrhagia. And they gave me birth control to regulate my period. But they only gave me, a 30-day supply. So I took the birth control. A couple days later, my period stopped. Everything was fine. A couple of months went by. Back to the same issue. Period came on. It did not stop. I struggled with that for 12 years. And every time I would go to the doctor, they would prescribe me birth control. And I would try to come off the birth control because by that time I had gotten married and me and my husband wanted a child. And so, I came off the birth control to try to get pregnant, and then I was back in the same predicament again. So year 10, I turned 27. My cousin actually invited me to her church, and her pastor called people up for prayer. It was right before I had gotten saved, so I didn't really think anything of it, but he called me to the front and he touched me, y'all, and this was the first time in church that I had somebody touch me, and I fell out. I fell out. I used to think people were joking, like, you ain't really falling out for real, you know what I'm saying? But I really fell out. He touched me and something in my body clicked, and I remember being on the floor, and it was like I was doing sit-ups, but it was out of my control. It was involuntary, and I did those sit-ups. And I must have been down there maybe 15, 20 minutes, but when I got up from there, I wasn't the same. My periods were no longer long and heavy, so I didn't struggle with that portion. However, they were still extremely irregular. So I actually got pregnant for the first time later on that year, but I ended up having a miscarriage. So that was quite depressing too. So 2 years after that, when I actually got saved at the age of 29 back in 2016, I started taking an intercession class, and she was teaching us about the benefits of prayer and stuff like that. And so I said to myself, okay, maybe I'll pray about my period issues. I prayed, and nothing really happened. They were still irregular. And by that time, I'd met a couple of people in the church, one in which is still my spiritual father to this day. And he had a prayer line. And at the end of the call, it's like an hour call, he says, would anybody like prayer? And so, here I am. I'm like, yeah, somebody pray for me. My period is just irregular. Sometimes it come on, sometimes it don't. Then in the past, sometimes it will come on and it wouldn't stop. And he said, you just like that lady in the Bible, And he told me to read the scripture. So that's the first time I actually discovered Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34. I wrote it down so I could remember the exact scripture. But I do believe it's in Luke too. But like I said, I put it down below. So I have been struggling with my periods for 12 years, and read that scripture for the first time about the woman in the Bible who struggled with her period for 12 years. So I said, God, 12 must be my number. Y'all, I prayed for 12 days straight, and I fasted from 12 different things. 5 months later, Journey, come here, baby. Come here, baby. Journey. Hopefully he come. Journey. Come here, Journey. Journey. My baby is not listening to me, y'all. Yes. Come over here, baby. Come over this side right quick. Come here. Huh? Y'all, I fasted. Not only have my periods been regular, but this right here, that's a result of my fast. This little boy right here. So, baby, you can't tell me that God ain't real. I prayed and I fasted, and 5 months later, I found out that I was pregnant. I have a 5-year-old. You just saw him. If you want God to answer your prayers, and if it's in God's will, pray and fast. He'll come through every time. My baby is a living testimony of that. God bless you.